Creating success out of failure. Creating success out of failure.
I'm Jonathan Federa. I'm here to inspire you to hustle and grow your income while doing what you love. Just because you have problems doesn't mean you can't prosper. Just because you have tragedy doesn't mean you can't triumph. Actually, you should be taking advantage of that.
There's positivity in my pain. I took scarcity and turned it into strength. I always tell life, there's not much you can do to me where I won't make an obstacle an opportunity. We never lose, we only learn lessons. If you wanna change your perspective. If you don't know how to do that, we'll show you how right now. Cause it's about to go down. You are tuning in to creating success out of failure. Creating success creating success out of failure. Out of failure.
Hey everybody, welcome to Creating Success Out of Failure. I am here with my friend Jay Doran. He has his company and his podcast, Culture Matters. My interactions with Jay, he is a very genuine, caring person, and he has a message that everybody needs to hear all the time, because what I've seen and how he's impacted the people around him is nothing short of spectacular. So with that, Jay, tell us a little bit about Culture Matters and your company.
Wow, thank you, by the way, my friend. Well, I could say the easiest way for people to interact with me would be, of course, you've been a guest on the Culture Matters podcast. I started interviewing people because I personally wasn't able to burden the responsibility that comes with having a message, meaning speaking from stage, educating and advising individuals, being a teacher.
Yeah.
And what I've learned from interacting with people on the show, investing into preparing to have them on the show, actually being open to learn, when I take a student approach first, rather than if I'm, let's say, seen as the authority, seen as the teacher to talk at someone, share with them something that could save them time, money, energy, give them intellectual property that would benefit their life, benefit their business. There's actually a curse that comes with that authority, that influence, that power. And so how I approach my work and what I do is, first, I'm a student and we're learning together.
Always.
So then that hierarchy that naturally develops of being above someone, right? So this could, anyone that's listening to this has influence over someone in their life. And the way I view it is how our listeners here, how I interact with people in my life, those I have influence over and those I do not, reveals who I am more than who I think I am based on what it is that I say to people that are in my life and outside of my life, or think about myself. So if you ask, what do? I work behind the scenes with very interesting, powerful people to help them develop cultures that maintain the authenticity that they started with. And all the great results you see in business, like all the things people say they want and feel they need, like better retention of clients, better retention of employees, higher margins. I believe all of that's positive symptoms. Those are symptoms of how the leader, the main leader, firstly, interacts with everyone in their life. That's what I'm obsessed with. So if I look at myself, because I'm a student first, how am I interacting with those that I come across? So the podcast as a medium to interact with those that come on. And by the way, your episode comes out today.
Oh, that's exciting.
July 19th. Yeah, very exciting. That was a total coincidence, but it's cool. Reveals me and how am I living what I talk about, or am I just talking what I talk about?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I think that grasping people have to be a student first to be a better teacher. That's huge. And here's why. Because for me, I loved playing hockey, right? Loved it. Played my whole life, still play. One of the most rewarding things I've ever done was go and coach. And when I was coaching, not only was I having fun, I was impacting those kids' lives at such a high level. Because some of them now are getting drafted, like, because I was doing this for 10 years. Some of them are getting drafted now, they're playing in the NHL. And I don't really talk about that all that much because it's not related to what I do, but I love that. And I noticed that when I was training these kids and coaching these kids, it actually made me a better player. It made me a sharper player on the ice. So there is absolutely a relationship to be a teacher, student, teacher, student. I don't think you can be one without the other effectively.
Sure. I mean, naturally, we're without looking in the mirror and taking notice of how we are interacting. I wouldn't be, calling it leading, I think is putting the cart before the horse. Because we get labeled things. We get labeled as positions of authority to have power over others, that we get the bias by being in a position of authority that others would be influenced by us without actually auditing our behavior, taking a look at how we act and interact. I wouldn't even put the word leader in front of it. Like, how are you actually interacting with your customers?
Yeah.
How are you actually interacting with your employees? How are you actually interacting with your partners in business?
Yeah.
Your immediate family that may be supporting you behind the scenes. How are you interacting with them? All of this is connected. I'm obsessed with these type of relationships and interrelations, and the relevancy, I think, for the audience would be whether we're an employee of an employer, right, of a company, whether we are a manager, like managing people subordinate to us within a company, whether we own a company or an executive in a company, wherever we are, how we act. Okay, so we could say how we act has consequences. Well, how do we interact? Because if I act a certain way, if I let's say that I embrace a conversation I've been omitting with a colleague at work. I have the conversation that I've been avoiding.
Okay. One of those tough conversations.
I fear how it could go.
Yeah.
Well, based on how they react, right, interact with me, I have another choice to raise the bar of how they can learn from how I interact, or lower the bar, meaning lowering the bar of they curse me out. Mm-hmm. And so I'm now justified to curse them out.
Yeah.
Well, I actually can choose to go deeper and work through my emotions in that moment, in that interaction.
Which is hard.
And ask a question. Yeah, well, that's personally, hard is relative.
Yes.
So yeah, let's say that maybe it'll be easier to not curse out someone that we admire. Maybe it would be harder to not curse out someone that we feel we're better than. But either way, there's consequences for how I interact with this colleague relative. So interaction to me is has more substance as far as the conversation of responsibility and leadership and creating results in one's life at every resolution, mm-hmm. personally, professionally, externally, as far as like, wealth development, all this. Interaction is a more substance filled word to me than action or reaction. I think human beings, we think in either ors, right? So we're taught you have to act right versus react. Well, what about interact? So anyway, so and like we could.
No, I'm actually.
What do you think about what I'm saying in this context of, like, let's say you have a colleague and there's something you've been wanting to say. Yeah.
I just want you to keep going because it's very interesting to me, and clearly the work that you do, you have to. I would bet I'm 95% sure you would have to actually be there and be around the people that you are helping and advising to actually see this take place, right? I mean, you're talking about building culture and monitoring and trying to improve people's interactions, right?
Yes.
So would you have to be present to do that?
Well, I like.
I mean, you got me off on a tangent here, and now
Now
I'm learning now. I'm
about
learning now.
how to answer that. Okay, so I'm going to separate. Let's say from what I've learned observing cultures. Let's say that you learn. Let's say anyone listening to this wants to build a strong company. Well, if you have a clear story of what people could buy into, people that work for it, and the clients of why they want to invest their money in the solution of their problem, because that's essentially what the client would be investing in, the perceived solution of their problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a clear story that creates buy-in between the marketplace and yourself, now you're going to have lots of energy, right? Money, cash flow, momentum.
Yeah.
Well, that's a piece of developing a culture. What's the story? Right? If you think about our country, it has a story.
Yes.
And the less people are bought into it, well, then it would have a higher likelihood for conflict.
Yeah.
So that's a piece. Language is a piece. Right? This is where you hear in pundits around culture talk about how important values are, which is true. How important the purpose of the organization, the mission, the belief, the goals, so that's language. Symbolism, how is it represented? That inevitably becomes, Nike, that check.
Yeah.
Right. That's a symbol that you think, oh, well, there's different types of symbols. So how people congregate and get together. Are there meetings? How do the meetings occur? Those are what I would call mediums. Like right now, we're interacting through the medium of a podcast. How people perceive us will be different than if they were with us physically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we smell. That would change how they perceive it. Our breath. So to answer your question, firstly, go back to it. Do I have to, how I do my work? Well, specifically, yes, I go into the environment. Like the analogy I would use is, it would be more effective for me to understand a lion in the safari than in a zoo.
Absolutely.
Now, do I have to? No, that's relative to how developed I become because as you study people and you educate yourself, that's one of the values of education, by the way. If you actually read to think and write your thoughts and develop an understanding, all of us that are listening to this we're benefiting from the many thousands of years of spilt blood. Those that invested their lives to learn things about this world, that we have the privilege to be born at this time.
Yeah.
To be able to draw from those experiences and act and interact with those assumptions that could add to our lives. Okay. So that's first to answer your question. How I do work is I go into the field and I observe. And anyone in this conversation that's listening, well, you're the director and the producer and the actor of your life. You can, or actress, and whatever pronoun you use, you can choose to slow down, to be very intentional and perceptive of everyone around you. Ask more questions. Be more honest. Things will start slowing down for you. So this isn't just me on a soapbox explaining some concepts and frameworks. Anyone here has the ability to slow down, just like we're having a conversation now. I can see you. You're present with me. We're in this. We're about to go all over the place. So I just would like to separate something first, is that culture is a word that, and that's why to me it matters, and it will be very important in the next decades and century for our species. It's a complex word. It's an opaque word. There's lots of ways to interpret it. What I know is great companies do have turnover. Cults don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something to be very aware of when you're building a culture in a business. Let's just say business. I see business as a laboratory for the social sciences. It reveals how humans interact. You know, there's a lot of value in business beyond just money, but money is an important value of it. How we build the culture increases or decreases the likelihood of the opportunity for meaning and significance of everyone that works within the culture, to actually grow as human beings, to actually become more valuable parents, siblings, children, friends. So I don't take it very lightly. So just to answer your question, I go in and I observe first. Yes, my work. Do I have to do that? No. However, I think that's also relative to how I develop as a teacher that believes that I need to be a perpetual student in order to maintain the responsibility that comes with being a teacher, that comes with being someone that is seen as an expert and also considers themselves an expert in a specific field of culture, right? So what I've learning is that there are definitely human beings. We have similarities no matter where we come from. So that would be like another way I could say that.
You pick up on patterns.
Culture is not just getting people to buy into the story of the company or just getting everyone to memorize the values. People actually have to learn through unlearning how to make choices, how to solve customers' problems. And think about this, right? Like little thought experiment. Customers pay us if they have a good experience. They're glad to pay the company or us to introduce us to people in their circle. They're happy to pay us and then give us business. That would be, we could label that, and we do in business, as a referral.
Absolutely.
So customers are happy to pay you and then give you a referral. Well, how is it that employees get paid and resent you?
Oh, shit.
Just thinking in terms like that can elevate a leader, or one that would consider themselves either a leader or they feel compelled to be a leader, whatever that means, to look at the interactions and interrelations of employees and customers a little bit differently. It's as if, those that are paid are more likely to resent the actual company than those that pay. Okay, so what are your thoughts on that?
That was amazing, and here's why. Because I've worked in a company that was I consulted for a company. I'm not going to say their name, but it wasn't a good culture, right? They would take you to they had employee getaways and trips, and they did everything to build culture. But the chemistry, I think there's a key component of chemistry there, right? Because you have dynamics within the office. You might have the CEO, you might have the CFO. The CEO could be a lunatic. The CFO could be a nice guy, and he tries to build the culture and keep everybody in check. But the CFO has people that he runs to for decisions, right? I'm an outside consultant. Whenever there's certain power dynamics and politics in an office or in a company or in a culture, I think that destroys the culture. I have seen examples of bad culture. For the most part, most of the places I have been at, and maybe part of it could be me, but most of the places I have been at have had bad culture. One of the things that I started to do when I rebranded into Integrated is make sure that we have good culture. So for me, while yes, we're friends, this is a treat, and I'm learning, and that's why I'm asking you certain questions, because I want to learn just as much as I want to our listeners to learn, because I think that most companies do not get this right. I would actually think the majority of companies do not get this right. And
yes, or may I interject?
Yeah, of course.
I actually, and I could be wrong, but I believe that Well, there's a natural totalitarian nature, an autocratic nature that develops with a company that is actually a symptom of a need. Meaning, when you start an organization, everything is centralized. Because who does it start with? It starts with the vision of a solution to a problem, right? The vision of a solution to a problem of the founder. And the profit is the margin in between what it costs to solve the problem and what comes in.
Correct.
Okay, but the whole business, which starts with an idea and how an idea is acted out iteratively with customers, because there's this, the first employees, in a sense, based on, if you look at the cultural employees from a belief standpoint, are the customers. They bought in.
Yes.
They bought into the
solution,
to the visionaries' belief system. Now that belief system, well, it's made up to an extent. It be objectively rooted in past interactions, meaning the founder, let's say, has confidence because they worked at another place, they had another business, and so they have this belief system that is coming through them, but isn't guaranteed to actually work. So now think about all of the pressures that come with business also fall onto this original member of the culture,
absolutely,
the founder. So decisions have to be made quickly and efficiently through that founder's interaction to make sure that the business sustains itself. It doesn't go bank, like it doesn't run out of
its cash flow is
money,
good. Yep.
funds. So the business starts with that individual. As the business grows and more, now there's enough customers where that founder, there's only so much time and
That
space,
founder has, to scale.
time and space that founder who's acting out this belief system to solve the customer's problem, which is what's worth their money. Their money represents their concept of reality and how they believe that product, that service, that what have you, solves to their individual problem, or as an individual, the context and circumstance of their life. It's worth the money to them because the money is a representation of less than what they get.
Of course.
Right? So they're like a microeconomic system, like supply and demand.
Yeah.
I know you love economics, so we can get in that. So I'm looking, think about this. The business starts where all of the responsibility is on that first leader. It starts autocratically because the customer looks at the whomever they're paying as the authority, or else why would they pay them?
Of course.
So what I see is that as a culture grows now, and this is it, depending on the moral fiber of the founder, do they keep their word? Do they procrastinate conversations with their clients? Like, do they avoid conflict, dialogue, or do they embrace it? How do they interact with those clients? That reveals them, their character. As Heraclitus would say, your character is your fate. It's an ancient philosopher. That sets the framework, the moral framework, the value system of the culture with how the founder interacts with their first clients. What I believe occurs in let's say it's a country that lets its constituents, its people, have free trade, like free market capitalism, be able to build businesses. I believe that all of the totalitarian potential in the human being is pushed, or let's say siphoned, filtered through the businesses. Being people that have a natural disposition to take charge, lead the troops,
absolutely,
and go. And heavy is the burden for those that have attention on them and those believe in them, because now more opportunities to do things that are really probably a bad idea, like lie and cheat and steal. There's more opportunity to lie, cheat, and steal when you have people looking at you and giving you their
Yes. When you're an
admiration.
authority, yeah. When you're an authority figure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So think about this. In a culture that actually allows its people to be free enough to start a culture, it starts autocratic. It starts in a dictatorship. The client says, how do I do this? What do I do this? What? And the likelihood is the client's not going to challenge someone that they believe in, that they're paying the money to. Now, of course, they may, based on their temperament. That's a whole, we'll go into those details. But the person that's succeeding, if they're keeping their commitments and they're solving the customer's problem, and now they're gaining success, they're gaining material success that justifies their being. Their pride is wrapped up into this success. As the culture grows, it becomes a cage. It becomes a cult. It becomes us versus them. It becomes, well, it's competitive. It's eat or die. It's win or lose. It actually it slowly conditions the founder to become a tyrant and actually get rewarded for it. And when I'm saying I'm not anti, just to clarify, I'm not anti-business. I'm actually I'm pro-business.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that I believe if you have a free, now freedom's relative, but the freer a country is, the more of that natural, because the first assumption I'm basing this on is that human beings have a proclivity, a natural pull to be tyrants. We have to actually be responsible for how we act and interact and respond to external conflict. And we have a natural pull to do things that really don't work out, that hurt people.
Yeah.
We constantly have to, that's part of becoming a mature whole person. So I'm basing what I'm saying about business on this assumption that human beings have a pull to make mistakes, let's say.
Yes.
Right. To learn, okay. To be pulled through their emotions, to react, to be primal, to be afraid, to be angry, to lust, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not arguing against vice or those things.
No, I know where you're going.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now my point is that in a culture that gives its constituents, its people, the ability to build a culture, a business, because a business is a culture. It's like a little laboratory of human beings that interact with each other freely. The bigger it grows, it becomes what we would say, oh, I don't want a government like that.
Yeah.
It becomes bureaucratic. It becomes like an aristocracy. It becomes, almost where it's run by a king or a queen. And so all of that can be not avoided, worked through.
Okay.
As the company grows to build its brand, its marketing, its research and development, it's everything. All of those natural symptoms of success that actually hurt a culture, which make it harder for employees to love what they do, can be worked through if it has help externally. And it's not just me, not like people like me. It's any type of external help is part of that team. Just like if you have how a president has a cabinet.
Yes.
So like I'm someone that's on the cabinet helping the leader, right? So firstly, I'd like to explain that if you're working for a company, to make this practical for everybody listening, if you're working for a company that you feel like doesn't have a good culture, you can have and demonstrate your character. You can smile when you go to the office and greet people. You can take your colleague out for lunch that you resent. And you can listen to them better by asking questions and learning about them and being honest with what's on your mind and how you feel. You can follow up with the clients that you may have been avoiding because there's conversations that really you don't want to have. You can hire your own advisement, coaching, to help you be a stronger person in your company. You can read on the time that you allocate to do it. You can exercise at the time. So you can change a culture.
You can make it
starting with yourself to definitely. And you can also work on yourself and start interviewing companies that align with the values that you've clarified. But I would say, get clear on what you believe, and so we can get in. I have lots of thoughts. One episode on the Culture Matters podcast, Don Hennig is coming to my mind right now.
Okay.
Donald Hennig was an executive of a mortgage company that decided very high up one day, well, from counsel from his wife, which, listen to the spouse, fight with the spouse in a healthy way. I recommend that. He's like, the culture sucks. And he was head of the, one of the top people. And his counsel said to him, his wife, well, you go smile. You go greet people. And he started doing what he already was part of him. That's just one example that backed up what I'm talking. That's not the first time I've heard of this, right? But that's a good example anybody can check out. But
when you said that, it's so simple, so true, but so many people forget to do it. I smiled when you said you could just go in there, smile, and greet people, right? That's a big thing. I always made that a point. You want to say hello to people, especially if you're working with them. But you also brought on, hey, take somebody out to lunch that you're having conflict with. Eat, discuss what's going on to see what's on their mind. Those are things that are uncomfortable that without, I don't think people think to do that, right? I think that's why having this is so important, because everybody deals with this conflict. How do you resolve conflict in a healthy way? But also, how do you build, and again, I'm sorry if this is selfish, I'm asking for our listeners and I'm asking for me, right? How do you build a great culture when people are remote? Because there's still companies that are remote. So what is your suggestion?
I love this. Is a very exciting. If the culture, so the state of buy-in. Okay, so just explain. Culture is there's a first. Let's say a metaphorical ecosystem of shared belief created by an influencer and maintained by the alignment of the influenced.
Mm-hmm.
That was the definition I've been using for years to surmise culture. And what I've learned from unlearning through work is I was missing something, and I know I'm still missing something, because that's how learning actually works. But I'm gonna explain it further. A metaphorical ecosystem of shared belief created by an influencer and maintained by the alignment of the influence. Meaning it's there, it's this invisible glue. Is exactly, you have these lines on the road that you see, that you don't turn into the other lane. You actually see those lines.
Yep.
You don't see the culture, but it's sensed. It's sensed. So it's created by an influencer and maintained by the alignment of the influence. However, I'm working on that, and this is a working definition because I'm adding to it, and it's not done, but not that I'll ever be done, but that's another conversation. How those within this ecosystem of shared, metaphorical ecosystem of shared belief, actually, I would think it's a literal ecosystem once you interact. Anyway, how those within the culture interact makes it a cult or a culture. And then we have to argue, well, what's the difference between a culture or a culture? I believe there's certain variables. If you're in a company and you can't speak your mind, I'm not voting for that culture. You're in a company and you feel guilty all the time about how you are doing your work. I think we're more towards a cult than a culture. You follow what I'm saying? So a culture and or a cult, and I'm arguing for the for culture where people feel and have the ability to say yes to things, say no to things, and act out their best self, which is relative. We can go deeper on that. Whether it comes down to what's the story that ties it together, what are the values and how clear those are, or are they? What is the symbolism that is used to represent that story and those values? And what mediums are used to drive the story, the values, the symbolism? Now, I do believe that if a company has a clear story of where they're going and why they're going there and how they're going to go there and who's going with them, right? It's breakdown story, and clearly has the values in context, which we could talk about how to actually behave in the productive, competent ways that would lead an individual to understand how to act and interact and get them there. And they also have symbolism, like and let's say the logo has significance and meaning. It's not just a stupid little there. It's tied to the story. It's tied to the language, how they behave. And there's meetings and there's essentially rituals that occur that increase the likelihood for people to know why they're working and how to work and who they're helping, and all these things add up. I would say that if the company takes the route of alienating other people so their growth, their focus, their meaning, their buy-in is at the expense of someone else.
Okay.
Like another group of people, another company.
Another company.
The likelihood that internally in the culture, there will inevitably be a deconstruction of trust and respect and meaning. The likelihood increases dramatically. It's like, it's on a meta level. It's a reactionary business development that I'm saying they could have an amazing looking culture from the outside. It's like, you go to, let's say, I'm not going to name a country, but you'll go to a country and it looks like it's all really, and I'm using countries because this is the same thing. It's just on a macro level.
On a bigger scale.
You could look at a country and say, wow, that's a great country to live in, but you're only seeing like the tourist pages.
Yes.
What's the actual substance in it? Companies can have what would appear as a great culture that their people have really bought in, but it could be at the expense of the people in the culture. They just don't know it yet. Their card isn't up yet. They're not the one being made fun of or ostracized or looked to be a fool. So even you'll see companies that you say, wow, their culture it's amazing. It has everything, like, and the numbers even reflect it. It may not necessarily be a healthy culture. It may be on the way to being a very toxic place. And also, I just want to clarify, I said it earlier, the toxicity, the conflicts of a culture are not to be avoided. They're meant to, they must be embraced and worked through. Just like in our life, if you avoid a creditor, if you avoid the IRS, if you avoid a family member, eventually it's going to come to roost.
And it's going to be worse when it does.
With a culture. So how we interact with those we disagree with, who would be labeled as our enemy, I believe that also has an effect on the culture. It's not just the story. It's not just, and I learned that over time, helping not only organizations develop story and language and symbolism, and these ingredients are building a strong culture to attract humans that would align with the values and also let them go. The ones that didn't, the more I've continued to learn and by unlearning and educate and being there, that brought me to what I'd say is conflict must be embraced.
Is there a format? Is there a
Or
way?
else it gets,
I'm sorry.
Go
Is
ahead,
there
yeah.
a way, like, let's say there's conflict. What do you think, besides embracing it, what do you think the resolution is? Like, let's say I came and said, hey, Jay, I have an issue between my sales manager or my director of sales, and I have an issue between my, office manager, which
Yes.
is very, very, very common. Those roles usually conflict, and it doesn't matter what you're selling. The office
Yes,
manager,
without
sales
that
manager.
conflict explicitly occurring, it's repressed and it's about to.
Yes.
So the conflict is not going anywhere. We are creatures of conflict. If we avoid, the paradox of conflict is the more we avoid conflict, the more conflict is developed through us. So
Like a rubber band.
what I say is that you don't have a complementary team without people that complement each other because they're different.
Absolutely.
How those conversations, I'll say it in as simple terms as I'm able to, how conversations occur, how one, let's say Mary has an issue with Marcy.
Mhm.
Does Mary confront Marcy in an open and curious way alone
Mhm.
and lean in to find out, hey, what's going on with you? Generally, maybe not even going into the conversation yet, to learn how well does Mary even know Marcy? First of all, does Mary know Marcy's story? Does Marcy know Mary's story? Now, even Marcy doesn't know Mary's story. Mary doesn't live through Marcy. Mary lives through Mary. So Mary will, if she's going to learn about Marcy, she has to actually ask and actually has to learn. It actually has to work through whatever it is in her mind that she has to say about how she feels and what she sees. Because as Rousseau said it, there's 4 truths: your truth, my truth, the facts, and the truth. Your truth, my truth, the facts, and the truth. What I derive from that quote is, there's something occurred in the workplace that between Mary and Marcy, whether Marcy's aware of it or not, and at what level is Mary aware of it?
Yeah.
Something occurred that Mary didn't like. If Mary doesn't confront Marcy in an open, curious way to figure out number one, who is she? Because that helps, and actually understanding someone's story. That's one step. I mean, then what she thinks about whatever occurred and actually does share how she feels and what she sees and how that is expressed is important. Well, what if none of that, I'll go back to that. What if none of that's occurring? Mary has not learned anything about Marcy and hasn't shared how she feels. What if Mary just tells Mike?
Yep.
Let me make it very simple. What if Mary just tells Mike and Bob, and then later on Sue? Well, I would say that would be an avoidance of the conflict necessary to happen between Mary and Marcy. Now, let's go back to that example, because we're not going to put it all on Mary, because you said something earlier that I want to clear up. It was, people can just smile. Well, this is how it works. Not everyone may, because we're so different. We have such different temperaments. We're different. People are different. Someone may never. So if you're not one to smile and you're just not going to do it, confide in one of your work friends and maybe they'll help you smile. So some may never. And it's not just on the individual. This is one of the binaries that our culture stuck in today politically. It's like either this person's right or that person's right. It's the individual and the group. It's the individual and the structure. And it's complicated.
Yeah.
So let's say Mary has an issue with Marcy, and Mary listens to this conversation, says, you know what? I'm not going to go to Mike only. Maybe I'll go to Mike after I talk to Mary, because then I'm seeking mentorship after I've had the conversation. I'm not just gossiping to avoid the conflict, to feel better about myself. The order starts with me. I'm going to go to Marcy, then I'll go to Mike. But what if Mary goes to Marcy and brings her to lunch and invests in her, learns about her more? Maybe they didn't have that deep of a relationship. They barely knew each other, even though they worked together for years.
Yeah.
And they had a conflict at work over something. And Mary felt blamed, and Marcy's, it's a, her colleague. So Mary takes her to lunch and invests in her, and not just with buying the lunch, or whether she does or not. Let's say she does. She learns about her, but Marcy's just shuts her down, won't open up, and just starts, attacking Mary. This is the thing. That could very well happen. And everyone would be justified to say, or anyone could easily justify to say that they are a victim of Mary. Mary's ability to work through her own emotion relative to that interaction where she's, let's say, being attacked by Marcy, it's relative to how much work Mary does on herself in her life.
Absolutely.
But maybe that, so this thing, there may be no likelihood that Mary can actually work through her emotions and overcome that situation, because it's relative to how much work she's done in her life.
Yeah.
Which is complex and subjective. So in that scenario, after having tried to interact with Marcy, then you go to Mike for counsel. So it's not like, oh, this is the solution. You just got to address the problem. Frankly, it just doesn't work that way. Everyone is different, and everyone's had different experiences that increase or decrease the level of the likelihood that they'll be able to burden someone else's conflict, to burden someone else's story. My claim for anyone here that's listening, you actually have the ability, and it would likely help you to get to know the people that you work with on a very deep level, because you actually want to know who they are. Absolutely. And when things go all awful and wrong, it doesn't have to be, oh, you're responsible for everyone else's stuff. Your responsibility starts with you, but it doesn't end with them. It's an interaction that can go as long. It's not a boxing match with 9 rounds. And you can seek help, and you can seek counsel. And so that's just one, I think
that's
something
a good example.
Specific someone can, but the conflicts in a culture and business are, they're guaranteed to occur, because everyone that works in a culture has different skill sets, which are rooted in their actual personality. And companies struggle because that's part of the conflict of learning how to build a company over time, who to put based on their temperament in the right seat.
Absolutely.
Based on that, how much understanding does that individual have of the seat, which you could simply say, oh, it's their experience. Experience is complex as well. It's because you could read a book, you could have 10 years of first year experience, or you could have 1 year of 10 years experience relative to how much you already know. Like, it's so complex. When you put people together and they have the ability to speak their mind, you're going to get chaos, you're going to get conflict. That's what leads to the success. That same success ends up suffocating what created it. So that's just normal if you're going to have freedom. So what I was saying earlier in the conversation about what I think in a free market, companies actually take all of the totalitarian nature of the human being, and it's siphoned through the businesses. And when there are no businesses and it's just government, you see what you see in history. just pure totalitarianism. So that's just something that we have to learn, learn to burden and interact through, which I think, when I say we, I mean the human species, we're basically to learn how to do business. I don't think we, at this stage that we're in with technological advancement, I don't believe we know anything about business. Like capitalism's run its course, but I'm not a fan of the other isms.
Yeah.
I'm saying that capitalism. So anyway, I know I just went like really micro to meta, but essentially, if you want to leave your company and you're listening to this and you feel like you're an entrepreneur, like you're destined for it, understand that you're going to become who you resent at work.
Do you think there's a way not to? There has to be.
Yeah. If you embrace conflict with others, embrace your critics, lean into them, learn from them. Don't cut people off in your life so easily. It's like, I'm going to make an argument for everything you've been taught, the opposite, or some type of mixture of them.
Right.
So yeah, like when you're ready, go and meet that person that you had an issue with and listen to them and figure out where you had a piece in that. Clarify what you believe. Like, what do you actually believe? Write it down. What are if you were to give yourself 4 values of how you think you act, like honesty, integrity, kindness, write a sentence after each one. Personally, if you're listening to this, what does integrity look like to you in a sentence? Like how it would be a behavior. How are you a person of integrity? Integrity. When I make commitments, I keep them by
showing up,
being honest when I can't. Now that's contextual.
Okay.
And then you have integrity. It's written down, like I just said it, example. And you go to the people closest to you in your life and you ask them, does this fit who I am?
And that is,
and then you go with
itself.
they'll 100%. And you're not going to get, it's only half the story, because then you got to go to people that you don't like because you have conflicts with them and ask them the same thing.
That's like double conflict.
And by the way, I'm not giving anyone a prescription for this. I'm just saying that these are things that will work when you're ready at whatever level you're at of your own individual responsibility. Because the natural burden of success, what is success? Well, let's define success this way. People see you because we're a social organism. They see you, they admire you, they believe in you, they invest in you. When someone pays you money, they invested in you. They invested a part of their being. What is money? It is the accumulated consciousness of interactions over time and space. It's just an accumulation of consciousness, interactions. They're investing in you. You're successful. You've been invested in. You know, we could define it like how much you've accumulated. Well, how have you accumulated that is a factor. Because then my argument is how you accumulate it will be more or less meaningful. And then you'll have that integration of becoming a mature person through the development of success. So my point is, we're just naked people that clothe ourselves based on other people's belief in us, and how we interact with them makes us, reveals what they believe in us or not. And they say, oh, your actions, not your words.
Well, we're either proving it or disproving it with what we do.
Your interactions reveal the substance of your words. Your interactions. So you'll hear people say, you got to cut out the haters. I never met a hater. I've been to 15 states this last 2 years.
Yeah.
I never met a hater. It's a linguistic tool to avoid conflict. It's just a language game. If someone says to me, like I have reviews on a book that I wrote, that criticism was it was valuable. I reflected on it, and we improved something from it. Yeah. So how someone says something to me is an opportunity to learn still. Yes, could it reveal that they may be upset for some other reason? Sure. I'm not discounting that, but it doesn't have to be an either or.
But do you think that's
so that yeah, I think that conversation on a macro level about the haters and all of that is very, very, very dangerous advice to anyone that's interested in developing personally. Mm-hmm. Because one has a negative feedback loop that just makes them more totalitarian, because like I'm saying, that overall business is the filter of the totalitarian nature of the human being in a freer country than one that didn't have, I'll say freer because it's not finite, freer country than one that doesn't let people do business.
No.
It siphons that totalitarian, and it has to, because when you start your business, you have to make all the decisions, and then it still all falls on you as it grows. So anyway, I digress. But what were you gonna say? Because yeah, I'd like to actually get your thoughts on it.
I do. I like it. I've never heard anyone explain it this way, but I think what's challenging is what you do requires a high amount of emotional intelligence. I think that a lot of people don't have that these days. It's something happened, I'm going to react quick. I'm not going to think about how I'm going to react. I'm just going to react. So in order to build a good culture, I think you're saying you have to embrace a conflict. In order to embrace a conflict, you have to have some level of emotional intelligence and patience, to get everything to work, to get everyone to work together, to get everyone to row in the same direction, so to speak, because mistakes are going to happen, conflict is going to happen. But in order to actually bring it all together, like, do you give people like systems, or is this like, let's say I say, hey, Jay, I need your help. I need to build out a sales team. The whole sales team's remote. How do you, I'm trying to see, like, if you walk into a company, how do you put those processes in place to kind of check where everybody's at? Because Susie might not be as emotionally intelligent as Wendy, who, might have done the personal work, who might have read a ton of books and has worked on herself. So is it, don't hire, Susie in the first place because she doesn't have emotional intelligence, and only hire people that have that, high emotional intelligence? Like, how do you construct that? Because there's a lot that goes into what you're saying, and I'm trying to see, like, I'm getting the recipes here and there. How do you kind of put it together?
Yeah. Well, I think the easiest, first I have to preface my answer with that. I don't do that. I work behind the scenes.
Oh, I know.
With select human beings that I very carefully figure out, is this someone I like? Is this someone I want to know? Is this someone, do I believe in their industry? Do I believe in their model? Do I believe in their future? What's their family structure? Like, there's all these boxes that I check to figure out, is this, let's say, an organization that I work with? The first thing I do is not come in this context, like we're talking in this context to explain what must be done and how it must be done. I actually
observe,
like the lion and and I'm going to make this practical for the audience in a moment. Like, the lion in the cage will be less a lion than in the safari. I go in and I observe, and it's called the culture puzzle process.
Okay.
The puzzle is a breakdown of the company's story, language, symbolism, mediums, and the hero. The first stage is I actually listen to every conversation that the hero, the founder, has with all of their constituents, their employees, their execs, customers, everything. I'm like a shadow on the wall, and based on their language, because language, I don't believe, is healthy when it's subdued, but it's healthy when it's understood. So based on the language, I write a whole book called The Culture Puzzle. And the book is a breakdown. It delivers a base of what the organization needs from story and language and symbolism mediums. But the key ingredient in semester one is, well, based on the individual's language patterns, I can reveal to them, actually write a book and a story and what their blind spots are as a leader. And so then they read it, and then we go through it, and there's semesters. That's not something I'm doing with anybody listening to this. That's not something that's available. That's part of my research and development. And yeah, like, it's a very exciting work. But I guess the way that I would, I wouldn't classify myself as, everybody's coach or the consultant. It's more theoretical, and it's advisor-esque role. So just to give context for the audience. And if anyone goes to the Culture Matters podcast, they can hear me qualifying potential client partners. And it's not something that's transactional. They're very deep, long relationships. So that's that. I guess in the sense of how I could help humans that weren't those humans would be doing more of this, which is not in my 2021 plan. We're just having this conversation because you rock and we become friends.
I appreciate yada,
yada. And really, because how you asked me to come on, it was very meaningful, and we've had a positive experience together. So just to give everybody context, I don't go on, it's not, podcast is not where I put my time. But anyway, so at this point, right, someday. So just to go back, I would even just go back, give some more context, then I'll give as tactical an answer as I believe will help anyone listening to this. Because anyone listening to this, I respect your intelligence and your ability to function as a human being and make choices. You definitely can make a change in your life and better your life just listening to this conversation. And I recommend, send in critiques, send in your thoughts to Jonathan, and like, that's a whole nother conversation, podcast in the future, like give criticism. So, because that's how you grow. But I just had lost my train of thought. So what was I going to say next? Oh, this is what I want to say. Yeah. You mentioned it takes a high degree of emotional intelligence. Okay, well, I will go further and say, and this is more like where my work is. I think the actual language game of emotional intelligence is a symptom of the very postmodernism that's dividing our culture. This idea that there's no moral truth, there's no individual self, there's no borders, and everything's a product of culture. Meaning, what you're actually saying is, what anyone would be saying is, one is not interacting in a moral, what could be called and argued a moral way. Like calling the behaviors that one would have to act out to be deemed emotionally intelligent are, by calling them emotional intelligence, it's actually making them about reason, which likely is a contradiction of the premise, which is to be emotionally intelligent. So there's irony in it. There's a contradiction of the literal meaning. They say emotional intelligence, because it has nothing to do with intelligence. It has nothing to do with reason. It has everything to do with a sense and an intuition and a feeling and a pull. It's more aligned with a theological premise. And I'm not arguing for everyone to listen to become some type of theologian or to align with a faith, whether you do or whether you don't. That's not what I'm arguing. And I'm not coming from that perspective. I'm just arguing that the idea of emotional intelligence, I think, is a symptom of our culture that believes it's omnipotent in itself. It's smart enough to outthink itself and act. And actually that leads to the hypocrisy of tribalism. So no, you don't need emotional intelligence. You need to actually, because you could just call that emotional intelligence, but I'm saying by calling it emotional intelligence, it actually takes away from the substance of what could be called emotional intelligence, which is anybody that's listening, you can choose to interact with Marcy like Mary did, and you might fail, right? It's relative to how well you're able to combat that person that may be bullying you.
Mm-hmm.
And you might fail, so you'll have to seek out more help from Mike or Bob or Stacy. So anyone here, okay, so this is the other thing I want to say. By saying, and it's a natural human position to take, to make it about other people, because our self is revealed through how we interact with other people. But by making it about other people, like, well, a lot of people don't have the emotional intelligence. Okay, we can agree that that would be true, but what does that do for us? Because how we can only be responsible for how we act,
yes,
and interact with them. So my answer to anyone thinking here, like, there's so many schmucks in my life, like they don't have the emotional intelligence to do this. I'm saying, firstly, you can.
Yeah.
And it's not to simplify, like I believe I've done as good as I can addressing the complexity of the individual, because you may fail, like it may not work,
and that's okay.
You're not strong enough. Well, I don't know if it's okay, because you may just lose everything. I mean,
yeah,
like,
you're
so,
right.
Yeah,
You're right.
It's okay, it's subjective, right? So what I'm saying is, though, I am aware of I'm aware of the fallacy of others, but my interest is in my own fallacies, my own contradictions. I believe my contradictions are revealed by those that I may not like based on what they say to me and how they say it.
Mm-hmm.
I need to embrace that.
Figure out why.
And what we call virtue, or or love, is somewhere in that mix, right? These are opaque words that are just, well, we may not be able to agree what they are fully, but they exist. So, right, like here's an example. How much emotional intelligence would you say someone needs? Or all right, how much someone has a child, and the child is upset and crying and hurting, but it's their child, so they interact in a loving, compassionate way. But on that same day, their employee was in the same state as the child, and they just told them to go F themselves. That's the same emotional intelligence potential.
Yep.
I mean, like, you interact with the child, you have the capacity. But my argument would be, most people listening to this, like people listening to this, if they have the empathy and the compassion for their children or their loved ones and the level that they had for their colleagues or their customers or their employees and so on, their bosses, whoa, their life would change. Like, you have the emotional, what we call the emotional intelligence in you. How can you strengthen it? Read, to think your own thoughts, write your thoughts down. If you can't read, listen, exercise, drink water, sleep, share your thoughts, speak up when you want to repress, ask more questions, develop personally, have counsel, seek mentorship, have coaching. So if you ask me, like, what can, what I've kind of clarified what I do and that I'm more in the conceptual side, right? And then of course we work in multiple industries, but very much outside, behind the scenes. And we met in the construction industry.
Yes.
Someone that's listening to this, if they don't have, here's an exercise someone could do. If you have values for your company, like they're written down, are they just words on paper? Or are they words on paper that have context, like I explained earlier with integrity? The sentence after the word, the more clear it is, it will help someone reading it understand a behavior. And then the second step there is, I bet if they believe they have haters, they're likely contradicting their values.
Yeah.
And there's likely low trust in the organization. People only respect people for as far as they can use them.
Yeah.
But remember, business is a natural medium that I think develops to harness the totalitarian nature of the human being. And it's those capitalists that the progressives love to hate.
Yeah.
And for good reason. They see their contradictions, that the capitalists say, screw you, you don't have my responsibility, which is true too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it comes with, a heavy burden to build a team and have all the responsibilities on you. And unfortunately, if you don't work on yourself and get good at compassion and empathy and honesty and trusting people, then the likelihood that you will build wealth if you succeed, right? You're in the 1% that succeeds, and hate yourself is very high. I believe they're tied together. So what can someone do to work on all this stuff? Well, they can keep listening to shows like this and actually have deep, or try to go into a deep, honest conversation. That would be one thing. That's amazing. I mean, the other thing would be, like I said, read. And anyway, I can keep going, but I don't have a template. First you got to do this, but hey, someday maybe I will. I mean, as I am learning myself. But even,
I think you go too.
Anyway,
I think you go too deep to have a template. I don't think you could. You probably could because you're intelligent enough and you'll work it out no matter what. But I think that you go so deep into your conversations and into the people that you are present with. And as much as people are the same and have the same habits, I think they differ a lot too. So I don't know if you could make one template for everybody, because it'd be very hard for me to do that with different programs, different products. Although it'd be a little bit simpler. You're talking about the intricacies of a person. Like the whole time you've been speaking, I'm trying to process and spin this around on how do I do these things, right? How do I interact? How and basically it's all starting with, self-reflection. And the more you know yourself, it'll help you guide and interact better with other people, which will.
How often do you take time to walk and
think?
Yeah, it's even
exercise, meditate.
Not meditate. I not against, I don't have much to say on meditation. Don't practice it, and I don't study it. So I won't speak to that. Although the insecurity that impels me would love for me to just talk about somebody that I don't know, because that's a part of being a human being. Okay. I would say, yeah, my question, because you said think, if we define thinking as how often do you take time
when I have conversations with a friend like this, okay, this is the most. When I work out, that's a lot of time to reflect, honestly. If I'm in the gym, if I'm lifting weights, if I'm going for a run or a bike, that's easier for me to think. And then I like to do a little bit of visualization, typically at night. That's time to just kind of task everything out. But am I deep in thought when I'm doing that? No, not really. When I read, that turns it on for
me. Is that part of your routine?
Yes, every day. Every day. I don't get to read as much as I would like, but I try to read 20, 30 minutes a night. Usually it's into something that I am trying to learn about. So whether it's YouTube, right now it's YouTube. Sometimes it's leadership. Sometimes it's usually has to do or involved with some aspect where I think I'm weak or I want to learn more about in my life.
What are you strong at?
I think building relationships building relationships and, lending, being that, I think that's where I've excelled, but there's dichotomies to that too, right? There's times that I've made mistakes. There's times that I have messed something up, in that. So I don't really think I'm ever strong or weak in any one area. I always think it's a work in progress and improvement, right? I think I have a decent ability to influence, but again, I'm always trying to, work on those things. So
What about the organization in its current state? What's the model, and is your intention to scale it? And how do you define scale?
my intention is to grow the company and scale, but scale at a pace that is going to work for everybody. I think when people say scale, they usually want to go from 100 to 10,000, right? You're doing, like, I'm just using that as like an example. I think that without the right processes put in place, so right now I'll give you just an example. Most people come in through capital gains, which is a course that teaches people how to help business owners get finance. Okay, they buy the course, they go through the course, and then they can apply to be an outside consultant for me. When they're an outside consultant, they get a decent amount of my time. I have a sales director who kind of helps them and guides them and make sure everything is set up and they're moving along everything. So right now, because of the rebrand, we are rebuilding Trainual. We put everything in Trainual. Okay, so not only do they have, the course, but they know how we interact, how we do everything. And then we have a weekly meeting, weekly Zoom. It's a training, it's a meeting. Bring up anything that they're going through, anything that they need. And then we do a quarterly meetup. But most people, I get a hotel, I get a hall, and we call it 3 days of training and bonding and get to know each other. So that's kind of the structure. But I don't want to scale until we get everything in place in order to handle that, because I don't want chaos. I've dealt with the chaos in the past. I don't want it. I want everyone to have a clear picture of when they sign up, when they come in, this is what they have to do. If they do this, they'll be successful, and move from there. And to answer that question specifically, right now we have six or seven outside consultants, and I'd like to get to 30 in the next 12 months, because people jump on, people come off, people jump on, people come off, because this might not be their main thing, right? They might be out there selling some other B2B service. There's some people that love this, do very well with it, and they stick with us for years and years and years, right? So 30 is a good number, right? I don't.
What's the capital? What's your affiliation with the capital gains? Is that a training?
It's a training program I produced under the Break Free Academy umbrella. So about 4 years ago, I produced it because there was so much misinformation and miseducation.
What's Break Free Academy?
Break Free Academy is Ryan Stewman's digital training course. Like, he has Apex, he has
yes,
a whole bunch of different programs. So when I was working at an older company, I was like, hey, you know what? There's so much misinformation. Let me, he put it out there. He interviewed a bunch of people. I did it. We paid, we had it produced, and it's his best-selling program that he didn't produce himself, right? And my goal with doing that was get people the education they need to help business owners.
What's the education around?
It's about the lending options, lending programs. It's about the process. It's about qualifications. And it's also how to, one, get the clients into the right, find where the clients are, get the right message to them, collect the right documents, and get that in so they can get approved. So it literally teaches.
Is it you are you the one explaining it in the
Yes.
modules?
Absolutely.
It's called capital gains.
Capital gains.
How'd you come up with the name?
I didn't. Ryan,
Okay.
Ryan came, no, to be very transparent, Ryan came up with the name. We both agreed on it, and that's what we stuck with.
Is there any narrative associated with it?
Narrative is, hey, learn how to make a lot of money working from home, helping business owners grow and scale their business by getting them access to the right types of financing.
What do you believe about that makes that meaningful?
Well, I believe that
if you were to say it in like, a sentence or two.
Sure. I believe that business owners need to be guided to get the right type of financing. And that's important because it's going to either help them grow or it could put them out of business. Right. And in this space, there's a lot of people that go the other route is, hey, we're going to get them something super short term, super expensive, and it puts them under. Where with us, okay, I teach them how to look at credit, time in business credit, and then what they're doing with the money to find the right program. Because maybe it's not, hey, he needs to buy a piece of equipment, but he shouldn't be taking out financing that's a 6-month program. With that equipment, he should be taking out an equipment loan, right? And if he can't get the equipment loan, work with them, show them how to actually fix why they were declined so they don't get it. I know that wasn't 2 sentences, but that's what we do.
Well, I'll add to the side. The likelihood if you didn't know anything about what you do, it would be like shorter than longer. So it's for anyone listening, like that's a sign, because any idea could be structured to sound good.
Correct.
Like, what would be the reason someone would buy into like Antifa? Because I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the exact core structure or belief before me, but in the part where it says, I'm paraphrasing, being oppressed is leading to pain, displacement, inequity in our culture. So tearing down the capitalist system will increase the likelihood for unity, equality. Like, I'm making all this up.
Yeah.
That's a paraphrasing of my understanding of that culture. Okay. I'm not reading off their website or remembering their website, but see how like that. Now, I personally disagree with the methods and the goals, and I don't think that'll work out well. Someone else may have a good reason for why they disagree with me, and I'm open to your feedback if you guys want to send in a letter. So anyway, but just to make this point, or my next question, I'll go back to you because you said that was longer than a sentence. From my experience, those that are competent and are impassioned about what they do, there's a lot to be said, and then it's about narrowing it down. So anyone listening to this that believes in what they do, but may not be clear on how to articulate it clearly to get for example, when you said capital gains, when people think of capital gains, well, what's the belief that underlies the learning and the interaction and the goal? What's the belief? And then what's the purpose? The purpose comes from the belief, right? So you said, we believe in X. You said a bunch of things about what you believe. So based on what you believe, I'll ask you, well, what's the purpose of capital gains? What does it do?
It teaches people
and you say
how
in
to
a
work
sentence.
with small business lending.
Yeah, well, you can listen to this later and pull out. And then, so, all right, if the purpose is that, what's the goal? The goal is when you solve X because of Y, you solve X because of Y, an outcome is going to occur. That's like, what are we aiming towards? The goal. The goal comes after, well, what do you believe? See, like if I'm paraphrasing Antifa, we believe that American sin through capitalism is oppressing all of the constituents in the culture. And so by tearing down the system, we have equality and unity for all minorities. Like, I'm just making it up. So our purpose is to protest and cause disarray. So the culture falls on itself with the goal that there is a new culture with
regime,
more unity. And by the way, there's a bit of mocking in this, so I'll just clarify. I believe people do things because they care and they want good. I believe in innocent before proven guilty. It's part of our culture and what separates a culture from a cult. So I think people that prescribe to that idea, by and large, believe in what they're doing. I disagree with the method and I disagree with the idea, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. So, all jokes aside, that's my personal, likely just personal fear of what's going on in our country. And I'm just projecting that on Antifa. So I just want to put a disclaimer there. So my question to you is, if your belief is that, and your purpose is that, well, what are you aiming towards with capital gains? Like, what's the goal of capital gains? What are these people that are going through that education? What are they aiming to? What are they a part of? What are they a part of? Because they have their personal belief in life. They have their personal purpose. They have the personal goals. Even if they're not written down, they have them somewhere in their being. Likely isn't clarified because that's why they're following you. And that's one of the values you can give to them, because people are lost and people need people. And every follower is a leader and every leader is a follower. It's contextual. It's relative. So yeah, what's the goal based on what you believe and what your purpose is of capital gains? And the reason I bring up capital gains is when it comes to mediums, that's a brilliant medium. It's a very smart medium to leverage the meta influence relative to your influence of someone that's created a community through story, whether it's clearly developed or not, through their being, through their mediums of events and community, through their values, whether articulated or not, just spoken and so on, that you've invested in the intellectual property to have that training, which would increase the likelihood that people that went through it would be aligned with what it is that you do, that you've created success. And you have created success in your personal life and your business up to this point. Yeah. So the point is, or one of them is, that is a good, if we use example, the medium of Ryan developed a medium community through a story, many stories, that impelled you to say, it would make sense for that audience then trickle down into this audience, because I'm siphoning, I'm filtering potential quality for what I'm looking to do. So that becomes a value add. Now, if you're going to continue that filtering, the more clear you are on what you believe and what your purpose is and what that goal for the capital gains, and what that vision is of capital, because vision comes after goal, because vision is the visual representation of the goal, right? What does the world look like when that goal is accomplished? By the way, if he had this all set up, and he could have sold you another $100,000 worth of intellectual property, because your conversions go up, you get more quality humans that go through, like yada, yada, yada. And that's why we're all must be perpetual students, because to just bring everybody up the hierarchy. I believe in the hierarchy. Anyway, so I digress on that. So the belief, the purpose. Then you say, all right, what's your goal then? What's the goal of capital gains? Because before they buy into you as a human being, well, technically they're buying into you as you're teaching them, which is a higher resolution of sales. You take, the etymology of conversation, it comes down to convert. That's why people say, oh, everything's sales. Everything's conversation. Everything's conflict. Yeah. So anyway, the point is capital gains. What's the goal of this? Because this idea is a bigger idea than whatever your company is that they're seeing first.
Correct.
And so that's like a shell, a brand that siphons opportunity to your organization, that because you have those are external humans that work with you, that buy into the culture. And then you have your internal.
Correct.
How you interact with both creates alignment, or
culture.
Creates, purgatory, I would say. No, how you interact with both. Yeah, because if you interact you could have all these people through capital gains seeing you as their false idol, and then you could just be spitting on, all your ops people, which is the natural. That's a natural development in a culture. Is anyway. So my question now is, so we might as well, we have a few minutes. What's the goal?
The goal is to help
of capital gains.
To get people into the small business lending space and do it responsibly.
Well, I like you already, so I like the response. That's just my perspective.
Yeah,
I like the
know.
responsibly thing. So what is the work? What does the industry look like?
Accessible.
If the goal is accomplished, what's the vision?
That
capital gains.
That's a great question.
Because the vision is the representation of the goal. If the goal is to get people involved, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember every word you said, to get people involved and then be responsible.
Yep. Then the vision
What's it look like?
Then the vision is small business is going to boom. Small business is going to take off. Seriously. Really? Because if they don't have to worry about getting hit with crazy fees and they're educated and they're getting into the right programs, those entrepreneurs that we are impacting at the end of the day, they're going to be in much better hands and they're going to grow and scale, and it's going to impact a lot of families.
I like it.
I love it.
On an aside, before I ask you the mission, if you live that, I think that the transcendental beauty of the human condition is revealed. I mean, it could be like so bombastic. What I'm trying to say is, if you actually do it, everyone will love it. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So
execution is harder than sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's why I think we have to say no to people that do lie.
Yeah.
We have to first tell them that that we believe they're lying, and listen to them to learn what is it. We have to keep our commitments. We have to think. We have to have help. They stack it up. We have to fight with our spouse regularly, not violently. Words with ideas. We have to do that. So anyway, now I'm not joking, but that is funny. My last question, because I'm going over because I'm getting excited.
I know. I appreciate it.
So if the vision is that, you love that vision, what's the mission? Because the mission is what I think of it. What actions would someone that's in that position, that's gone through this training, that believes in what you believe, that has a clear understanding of the purpose of capital gains, that understands what the goal is and sees the vision, what do they need to do? Like, what types of behaviors, if you were to say in a sentence, what's the mission? What are we going to do to accomplish the belief, the purpose, the goal, and the vision? Because that mission, a lot of companies, they come up with a mission statement. It means nothing without clarity. So it's just a little piece of it. The mission, I think, comes last. It's like, what are you going to do? What behaviors need to occur? Like in Culture Matters, the mission is to read, write, listen, and speak every day. Every day I'm challenging myself to do those things. All right. So what's the mission? Because the vision, it's tied to the vision. What's the mission then? If the vision is what you said it was.
You'd have to educate a bunch of entrepreneurs, right? By doing podcasts, by making social media posts. What I was saying is you have to get in front of clients, see what first off, educate. Okay. But nobody wants to educate without they're actually having a need, right? So if a client doesn't have a need, they're not going to open up to you for lending. Okay. Then it just comes off as spammy or preachy. So you have to be engaging on social media. You have to help people, whether it's a consultation, whether it's getting them into a program. And then, that's really the activities, right? You're in sales. So you reach out to somebody. Hey, do you need help with your business? Yes, great. Okay. Tell me about your business. Okay. You get the bank statements, you get a credit report. You review everything with them. Okay, Jay, what are you trying to do with your business? What are your goals? Your goals are to, drop $20,000 a month into marketing, get this piece of machinery. All right, this is how we accomplish that. That's what we do in a nutshell.
If you were to say that, like, let's say, boil into a sentence, what has to be done? Is there a behavior, a way to think that enables all of that to flourish? Like Bob just went through the training and sees what the belief is. He believes that he likes that.
Yeah,
right? Like, what's the mission then? And by the way, everything you said that's deeper and more dense, that's all valuable information. Just like it went from Ryan's culture to capital gains to your business. It goes from the belief, purpose, goal, vision, mission to your compendium, or your bill of rights to your compendium. Like, and the more clear that you develop your ideas, people can now start learning through them to be better at it, what it is they do. So I don't want to discount all the value, or for the audience to think that all that deep understanding that you have of your business is meant to be like thrown away. We just want to have this simple sentence. No. It's contextual, and it's about utility. So, because when you structure a belief, purpose, goal, vision, mission, well, you can actually tell a story without and avoiding the dryness of what we have to do or how, because why are we doing it?
Yeah.
Where are we going? Right. So
how are we doing it?
And the purpose and the goal and the vision, this is just one tiny piece of the puzzle to create alignment. Because if, let's say, you're on a stage and you're in front of people, right? You can share your belief. Like, I know what my belief, like what Culture Matters meta brand is revealed through every time you come on the podcast. It's not scripted. I believe when people read to think, write to develop, listen to hear what is unsaid, and speak to let go, they develop more value for themselves and others. So the purpose of the Culture Matters podcast is to uncover the genius of our guest with the goal to make you, the listener, your curiosity cool. We have a 91% listening time, average listening time. The audience is listening. They know what I believe. Now, and then the vision is that human culture is open, curious, and focused on creating the future. So our mission is to read, write, listen, and speak every single day. I didn't just make that up on a whim. I read constantly to think. I write constantly to understand what I'm doing. I have been on a hiatus speaking, say that, which much needed. And although I'm speaking now so because this is a stage, and I listen to hear what is unsaid. That's through the podcast. That's through the work that we do. So, and the more that I actually act out the things that I talk about, I'm less of a hypocrite, which is very important if I'm going to have the amount of responsibility that I have. And I have a tremendous responsibility, not only with who I work with. How about that I have a relationship? You may be listening to this, someone listening to this. How about that I want to have children someday? Anyone listening to this, you may not have any employees. You may not advise people in power. You may just have a family that you're not actually responsible for, and you don't know how to be responsible. No matter where you are in your life and who is subordinate to you, how you interact matters, and how clear you are and who you are, which is part of what you do and how you do it and why you do it, is very important. So anyone listening to this can listen to it a few times and try to figure out, what do you believe about your work, about your business, about your life? You put it in any context. What's your purpose based on that? What's your goal based on that? What's your vision? But also say this, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat up to this, this stage I'm in my development and my unlearning. I call it the BPGVM has been the most useful for this set. And this is not values we're talking about. Just want to clarify. That's a whole different thing. This is idea. Because, BLM has an ideology. Antifa has an ideology. The MAGA movement has an ideology. Zuckerberg has an ideology. It's funny how they just went in that order. Zuckerberg has an ideology, or rather, Facebook has an ideology, and Zuckerberg's the hero, right? DJ is the hero of the MAGA. I don't know who the hero is of BLM or Antifa, and that's actually scary because you don't know who runs. If you don't know who runs something and you don't know what they believe, it's not clearly out there. It's very, very bad, even if their intentions are good. That's what I say about that. And I want to put a disclaimer that I'm using these examples because of contrast, because of our culture, and also that I do believe that people that are parts of groups, they're not the ones to be argued. It's the pundits, it's the leaders. People, by and large, do things because they care and they believe in them. And what proves that is innocent before guilty, before the law. It works. It's not perfect, but it's so psychologically we say, oh, they're just all evil. Not necessarily. And by actually saying that, you're increasing the likelihood that you're going to do something evil. And if you're interested in learning more about that, Google The Banality of Evil, Banality. And anyway, it's another time. I digress. Jonathan, this was a lot of fun.
Jay.
And we'll do it again sometime.
I think we have to, actually.
I
First off, I greatly appreciate you coming on. And second, please tell everyone what is the best way anyone can reach out to you if they have a challenge or just want to consume your content. I mean, I know you have your podcast, Culture Matters, but is there anywhere else or?
Well, if you go on the Culture Matters podcast, it's black and gold.
Okay.
You'll see interviews. I prepare for 3 to 4 hours for every interview. Absolutely. The purpose is to uncover the guest genius. You're about to be released today. Actually, they should check that out. That's a great medium for anyone to learn with me.
Okay.
To learn with me. I'm actually living the things that I've talked about today. That's what that medium is. That's part of it. That's the stage that we're at with that medium is the listen to hear what is unsaid. So remember I said, read to think, write to develop.
Yep.
All the podcast episodes we've done in the Culture Matters podcast is just under the last part, right? It's read to think, write to develop, or second to last part, listen to hear what is unsaid. I've been interviewing. So there's also 2 monologues on there where I actually am articulating different ideas. I don't know the episodes. They're in the 80s. There's just under 100 episodes out on that medium. But yeah, so listen to hear what's unsaid is that phase 1. We're going to be doing things where I'm reading books and unpacking them, my thoughts on books. So that's read to think. We're going to be like reading things I've written. That it's going to grow in the utility of it. But mostly there's interviews, and I stress everyone. It's all different walks of life, all different types of industries, and I would be surprised if you didn't get value from them. Like I said, there's 91% listening time. People really enjoy these conversations. So that's one thing. The other thing is me. I mean, JayDoran, Facebook. I'm not accessible. But if you send me a criticism, I will absorb it, and I would like to argue with you. Yeah, definitely. 30 Days of Thought is on Amazon. The purpose of the book is to actually write your own thoughts in the book. After every page, it's like a short essay. There's a place to write in the book. You can write your thoughts, argue with me, because it becomes the reader's book once they get the book. And the purpose of the book is actually to impel the reader to put out their thoughts. It shows you how to do videos. It's to read, to write, to put videos of your thoughts out there. So if you use 30 Days of Thought, it's not a book to be read. It's a book to be interacted with. And it's also a book that if you don't like, well, maybe you don't know you don't like philosophy. It's a book that may let you down because it's not exactly what you think it is. It's a book that's meant to be utilized as a tool to help you think outside the box, share your thoughts and share your thoughts through social media. So that's on Amazon. THIRTY DAYSOFTHOUGHT. And then the other thing is on Instagram, Jay Doran, the Culture Man. I know I've been told you shouldn't give all these different things, but I think that's stupid advice.
No, because you never know. You never know where they're at.
Yeah. So marketers are evil. Anyway, that's another podcast. So thank you all for listening to this. And LinkedIn is my name, JayDoran. Oh, every day I put out thoughts of mine. Every other day it probably averages out. And so those are organic and they're not contrived. Like it's fresh insight that I welcome anyone to comment on and disagree with, because the more conflict we have, the better. But that would be it. The podcast, I think, will change someone's life, because it's changed mine in the most beneficial way, to interview and to inquire and to learn about people. So that would be the best I could do there.
Thank you so much, guys. Please follow Jay and share this episode. Leave us a review. I know you got something out of this one. We will catch you on the next podcast.
Creating success out of failure. Creating success out of failure.
Thanks for tuning in to Creating Success Out of Failure. Please share this with someone that needs to hear it, post it on social media, and leave us a 5-star review. I'll catch you on the next one.
Creating success out of failure.